What is up, everybody? Back with a very important video. It's a hot topic. It comes around every year. Everyone talks about how much training volume do we need, right? You probably see it all over Twitter, all over YouTube, just all over the fitness space. Now, what we've had over the last, again, 6 to 9 months, I'd say, is that we've had the whole Mike Mentzer style of training where everyone is full on Mike Mentzer mode, high intensity, one set to failure on each exercise, all this stuff. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you've got more of a higher volume approach. People like Mike Israetel, the Renaissance periodization, all of them, that they promoted more of a higher volume approach. Now, both can work, but what is the right answer? You know, you've got both ends of the spectrums here. Now, it must be confusing for a lot of people. Now, I don't believe in either end of it. I think, again, the answer is somewhere in the middle. I don't believe in a full-on blown Mike Mentzer approach. And I don't believe in just blasting volume for the sake of it, because both make no sense to me. Again, the answer is, again, somewhere in the middle. Like a lot of things with training. So I wanted to put this video together just to give you all a little bit of an understanding of what you need to be looking at. And it's going to help you actually moving forward. Instead of some of the shit that people talk online, this is actually going to help you moving forward. So, how much volume do we need? So first thing, you need to define, well, what is actually training volume. Let me move this down here. Right. What are we defining as training volume? Because I get this question and people go, what is it warm-up sets? No, it's nothing to do with warm-up sets. Training volume for me is the number of hard working sets for a muscle group that you're doing more or less every week or every 7 to 10 days, right? So if you're leaving a set and you've got 6-7 reps in the tank, that's not going towards training volume for me. The sets that we're looking for that is going towards training volume are the ones that we're taking more or less right out to failure. At most 2 reps in the tank. But again, the way I'm looking at things now, I'm taking a lot of things to failure. Most things, never leaving more than 1 rep in the tank. So that's the way I'm approaching it, right? How many hard sets are we doing every 7 to 10 days? So when you have that in order, that definition, now what we do, everything now from this point makes sense. So recommendations, it's probably a big variety, a big range for people. It's 8 to 16 sets per week, per body part, for most muscles. Now again, there's a big deviation is that, but what we're looking for, I always tell people, we want to try and train with as much good volume as we can before our quality drops off. You want to try and handle as much work as you can. But then if your intensity and your recovery starts to suffer because of that, well, it makes no sense. As I say, I don't believe in just the one set to failure and that's all you need, because you're likely going to be, you're not giving enough stimulus with that. And then I don't believe in burying ourselves into the ground, but just tons and tons and tons of volume, leaving reps in reserve. I want to train with as much good volume as I can and actually recover from. Because training is only as good as what we can recover from. That is an important point. We want to train as hard as we can, but be able to recover. So, this 8 to 16 sets, all this stuff, it all depends again how hard can you train, how hard is the stimulus or big is the stimulus that we can provide, how intense can you train, how is your technique, how accurately can you take a set to failure with making the target muscle the limiting factor. All of these things come into it, because someone might say they're doing 25 sets per week for a muscle group, but I guarantee the technique is more than likely shit and the intensity isn't where it needs to be. So these are the things that can definitely skew your sets per week. But let's just take someone who's got decent intensity, decent technique, they know what they're doing, 8 to 16 sets, you're going to be in that range. Now, how do we work that up? Like, how could we set that out? Now, just as an example, right, fittest thing, every muscle group will be slightly different. So let's just take quads as an example, right? So in a session, let's say we're training quads twice a week. What I've found, not just myself, but then with a lot of other people, if we're taking our sets all the way there, pretty close to failure, right, it's hard to get past 8 to 10 sets for a muscle group in a warehouse, because what tends to happen is that you get to a point where you're beating a dead horse. Like you've already given enough stimulation to send the signals for hypertrophy to occur, so you get into like 8-9 sets and you're fucked. You're doing 12, 14 sets for quads in a session, and it's just not needed. Once you get to that, again, 8, 9, 10 zone, it's like a bell curve, your quality just begins to drop off. So I'd rather you split your volume up into 2 sessions. Just keeps your quality high across the board. So let's say, Monday we hit 4 to 8 sets, 4 to 8 good sets of quads, 4 to 8 on Thursday. Now that can either be 4 plus 4, 8, 8 plus 8, 16. So again, you got that 8 to 16 zone. You could hit, really blast your quads on Monday you could hit 8 sets here, and then the next day is only 4. So that's 8 plus 4, that's 12 total sets for quads. So that's a way that you could work it. But again, we're in the volume parameters of where we need to be. Now, some people may be on the higher end of this. You might be someone who needs 16 sets. Someone might be on the lower end of this who can create such a big stimulus on the quads from 4 sets that they can't do anymore. People who are really strong, really dialed in with the quads. You give someone 2 sets of leg extension, 1 set of hack squat, 1 set of leg press, and all of them, it's a complete failure, and someone does 4 sets there. Someone who's very advanced, very experienced, that could blow their quads up. They're done with that. Doing any more than that would just be, as I say, beating a dead horse. So maybe someone might be on the lower end, you could be someone who's on the higher end, but this is a recommendation of how you can go about it, right? So these are important things to think about. Now, these are questions I always get asked a lot. How do we know if we're doing enough volume? How do we know if we're doing too much? Because there's a couple of answers to these questions that we need to think about. So if you are progressing from week to week, so let's say we're hitting 12 sets per week for quads. How do we know if that's working? If you're progressing from week to week, again, you're able to add a little bit of weight, an extra rep, you're moving things with better technique. That won't happen every week, but again, if you look back over the course of a 6 to 8 week training block and you're running 12 sets per week, give it some time, let the body make adaptations, and if you're progressing, that's fine. Don't change nothing. I always tell people, if you're progressing in the gym, don't change nothing. You're good to go, right? So that's what you're looking for. So let's say you're not progressing, recovery is on point. You sleep, you're in a calorie surplus, all this stuff. Let's say you're on 10 sets per week and you've been running this for 6 weeks. Everything is on point. We're just not progressing. What we can go from is, okay, maybe we're on 10 sets. Let's try 12. Let's add an extra set out of the day, or maybe 2 sets for the week, whatever way you want to work it. We're not going to go from 10 sets all the way to 18 sets or 16 sets. You're not going to throw the kitchen sink at your quads right away. Be patient in your approach. Just add 2 sets and then go from there. Again, boom, give that another 6 weeks, give that a run. More than likely, there we go. There's some progression coming in now. Now you stick with your 12 sets. You see? That's a way you can think of it. Or about the flip side of the coin, what about if someone is progressing well on 16 sets? So let's say we're on pretty higher volume, so to speak. Let's say you're on 16 sets. We are progressing well. Load is going up, reps are going up, performance is going up, but our joints and connective tissues just can't handle it. Again, let's say your quads, your knees are just absolutely wrote off, your knee pain, all this stuff, tendonitis is starting to creep in. Well, that's no good, is it? So the muscles can handle that volume, joints and connective tissues can't. So let's say that was 16 sets, you pull that back down to maybe 12 or 14, and then you continue to progress on that. The body will always let you know if it's doing too much or too little. There are a couple of signs that you need to look out for, but you need to be patient with any changes you make. If you make a change, give it at least 6 weeks. Don't be shitting yourself after 1 week if, I've made no progression, I need to change my volume. No, give things time, at least 6 weeks. Let the body adapt. Again, you're going to be better off instead of changing and chopping and changing everything every week. Don't panic with your training. Trust the process. Make adjustments, smart adjustments when you need to. And as I say at the bottom here, each muscle may be different. So that's something to think about. As an example, what I've found me and a lot of people I coach, hamstrings don't require as much work throughout the week. So again, hamstrings may be on the lower end of that 8 to 16 zone, maybe on the 6 to 8 sets per week for hamstrings. As an example, something like, shall we say, maybe pecs, back itself, maybe back can be on the higher end of the spectrum. It will all be individual, of course. There is no one size fits all, but that's things to think about. You also need to think about the overlap between bicep and tricep with back and chest. Now, let's say you're doing chest movements. Let's say you do 10 sets of chest per week. That's also going to count towards some of your tricep volume. I'd say if you're doing 10 sets of chest with all pressure movements, I'd probably count that, that could be 4 or 5 sets of direct tricep work, so there will be some overlap. Same with back work. Let's say you're doing 12 sets of back. I would probably class that as 6 sets of bicep work as well. So you need to count that in addition to your actual isolated work as well, because there will be some overlap between biceps, triceps, maybe some medial delt, front delt as well, with all your pressing and pulling movements. So that's something to consider as well. Also a big thing, deficit versus a surplus. Now, obviously, it should be obvious to people, but if you're in a little bit of a surplus, your recovery is heightened because you've got more calories coming in, more fuel to recover from training. So you might be able to handle a touch more volume because your recovery is on point. Whereas if you're in a deficit, the aim in a deficit is to preserve as much muscle tissue as possible. So it's not as hard to preserve muscle tissue as it is to build it. So you'll bring your volume down because your recovery is lowered, and also because you don't need as much to preserve it as well. So, an example, surplus, you could be 14 sets per week, and then you're in a deficit, you bring that down to 10. Just because you're not going to get anything else trying to push 14 sets in a deficit. What does remain the same in a deficit is your intensity must remain the same. That does not change. Your intensity, your execution, your application to training does not change, but your volume may come down just a touch, and that's the reason why. So, overview, 8 to 16 hard working sets per muscle group every 7 to 10 days. Each muscle may vary. You may be on the higher or lower end of the spectrum. Trial and error is going to be massive in this. It's all about getting in the game. I always say, get in the game, get some numbers on the board. You can't, you can't make adjustments if you're not in the game. So get some numbers on the board, track your training, 6-8 weeks, see how you're going, make adjustments, and the body will let you know what you need to do. It's that simple. So it's all about, like everything with training, what I always say, you need to experiment, get in there, get some numbers on the board, and you're going to be good to go. But these numbers that I give you here is a decent start point. You're going to be good to go. If you follow this, make the smart tweaks, you're going to be fine. Don't fall for these camps where they say it must be high intensity, meds are only training, and it's high volume or nothing else. It's like, no, the answer is somewhere in the middle. And when you accept that, all of this dogma, it's all the bullshit, as I always say, look somewhere in the middle. You're going to find your answer there, and you're going to be good to go. Right? Let me know what you think, and I'll speak to you all in the next one.